Previously, we've learned that topics are big and broad. They're encompassing of the main idea. You take a topic like writing, and you can have so many different main ideas about it, right? Why it's annoying, or how to do it well, or what changes when you do it on a computer. Uh, when we have that topic, we can communicate it in a variety of ways. It might be in the first picture that people see. It's hopefully in the title. Good to put it in the very first sentence, maybe even the very first word. But also important sentences, right? The thesis, topic sentences, and throughout the text, woven into many sentences, and ultimately the most repeated word. And we can see an example of how this turns into coherent, easy to read writing with a passage Y. That's by a guy named Mike O'Connor. He's a bird watcher, and he has this article he writes for the Cape Codder newspaper called Ask the Bird Folks, where people write questions about birds and he answers them. And we get this example text, and it's pretty easy to see that this is a text about herons, right? There's some notes on this. At first, you get about 10 mentions of the word heron in a fairly short passage, and many secondary references, like when we say a few or they, those are the herons, right? We note that heron is the very first word in the passage overall, at least a type of heron. But it's also the first word in a lot of important sentences, right? Look at the last sentence of the introduction. That's an important sentence where writers often give main ideas, and there it is, right at the front of that sentence. We also see it at the front of topic sentences as well. Okay, but there's another important thing, that's happening here. I mean, aside from us being able to easily picture a heron as we read this. Now, take a look at the sentences that are in green highlighting here. These are sentences where heron is the grammatical subject, and if you look, most of the sentences in here, in fact 12 out of 19, have heron as the grammatical subject. All right, this means that herons are doing the actions, they're doing the verbs, right? Herons are the ones living and breeding, heading south, coming to Cape Cod, and avoiding the dangers and hunting and fishing and so on. They're driving the action forward. Now, you've probably heard from teachers, well, don't repeat yourself, and that's good advice. We don't want every single sentence to say herons, herons, and herons, because that's repetitive. So what do? We use adverbs, right? That's how you mix these things up, right? Take a look at this one here, okay? Here's the main clause. The herons are the one heading south, but we toss an adverb in front. When the cold weather arrives, all right? Here's other examples of it, right? In the winter, that's an adverb. Right? When these areas become frozen solid, these are all adverbs, right? Here's another example right here. All right, you toss these adverbs. Sometimes, or even things like standing over a frozen stream, the herons will, right? All these things can keep herons in the subject position, but also give you some sentence variety and just a more engaging text. Ultimately, Pinker has a good quote about this. It's always easier for a reader to follow a narrative if he can keep his eyes on a protagonist who's moving the plot forward. How do we do that in our writing when we're writing about science? Well, let's take a look at something that didn't really achieve this, and that's this sort of sample of essay 1. Here, take a look at what's dominating in the subject position, and that's references to the source material, right? This source said, and then this source said, and this source said. So, this doesn't really give any sort of central topic that the reader can focus on. It's just kind of like some people are saying stuff, right? And also, the writer fails to make some easy connections. Like, take a look at this sentence here, which is attributed to the evolutionary psychology video. Things often feel right or good to do, even though we don't know why we feel that way. Well, but Dennis Dutton says that too, and so do these authors, right? That's an idea that weaves all these ideas together. Some of these particular things, like, okay, well, we like characteristics that indicate fertility. Miller and Kanazawa would say that, but you know what? So do these sources as well. All right, so there's got to be a better way to kind of structure this, to organize this. Part of the one way we can kind of remember this is to think about the idea of a spotlight on a stage. The stage is full of actors, right? I picture like a New York City street scene, and there's people popping out of windows and walking along the stage. It's this crowded street scene. But then the spotlight comes on and shines on this one person. And that signals to the audience that this is the main character. This is the person you're supposed to follow in this sort of sea of people, right? And same thing, in a sea of information, where do you want readers to kind of focus on? All right, and this is kind of different than what we've been trained to do. This is part of the reason that summary is kind of a more straightforward task. You get your typical kind of summary analysis writing assignment. All right, well, analyze the portrayal of love and marriage in Romeo and Juliet. You know what the topic is there? It's Romeo and Juliet. All right, and the main idea is what you want to say about Romeo and Juliet. Well, Romeo and Juliet portrays love and marriage as a foolish endeavor, or maybe it shows love as a foolish endeavor, but marriage is more of an economic one, or more of one of obligation. You've probably gotten a writing assignment like this at some point. In 2 pages, double space, analyze how Dr. King uses ethos, pathos, and logos in Letter from Birmingham Jail. Well, there's your topic, Letter from Birmingham Jail. And, the main idea, it uses ethos, pathos, and logos. All right. Well, when you're doing synthesis, though, we can't just look at the prompt, right? And we can't just say, okay, topic is Miller and Kanazawa and Dutton and the evolutionary psychology video. Especially what if you got like 15 sources you reviewed? It can't be the topic, right? You got to figure out what the topic is. It might seem hard to do, but the trick here is to let it come out, maybe even a little halfway into the writing. You let the examples lead to it. You take the notes, you start grouping things into related examples, and then you've got these kind of little clusters of ideas, and then you take a step back. All right, what are all the clusters about? What's the thing that they're all examples of what? That's probably the topic. And then you just ask what you want to say about the topic. That's the main idea. That's a way to structure the text. Let's look at some examples of this process playing out.